And Pastor, one thing I've seen is the battles of life bring us to the place that we forget. But God is in us. God is for us. I mean, God is with us. Who can be against us? And God was with Gideon. And he said this. He called Gideon something that Gideon did not feel about himself. He said, Gideon, you're a mighty warrior. Everybody look up here at me for a minute if you would. When you realize, when you really get it, that God has called every one of us, no matter what stage we're in life right now, he has something specific for every one of us to do for him. When you get that, if you're anything like me, your insecurities will rise to the surface and say, God, I'm not good enough. You got the wrong person. So tonight in this story, I want to unpack it like this. I want to talk about 3 steps that can move you from insecurity and fear to faith as we unpack Gideon's story a little bit more. Number 1, the first thing that can move us from insecurity to faith is this. You've got to face your insecurities. If you do not face your insecurities, they will be a lid. They will limit what you can do for God in your life. God will still love you the same. But man, I know every one of us want to do what he's called us to do. But if you don't face your insecurities, it will put a lid on your life. Speaking of insecurities, my wife is a blonde now, so I'm allowed to tell you what I'm getting ready to tell you. But speaking of insecurities, now you listen up here. There was this ventriloquist, and he was traveling clubs, and a ventriloquist has a little dummy on his knee, and he pretends to talk through him. And he was in a little town in Arkansas, and he was doing a show, and he always started out his show with dumb blonde jokes. So he's doing these dumb blonde jokes, and there's no blondes here, right? Yeah, he's doing those dumb blonde jokes, And all of a sudden, about in the fourth row back, a blonde stands up. And she starts yelling at this ventriloquist. She said, I'm tired of your dumb blonde jokes. What does the color of someone's hair have anything to do with their value? It's guys like you that stop young ladies like me from being all we can be. The ventriloquist, he was embarrassed. He was like, oh, ma'am, and he was trying to apologize, and all of a sudden she yelled at him. She says, Mister, you be quiet. I'm talking to that little dummy right there on your knee. All right, it must have been my delivery, but listen. Speaking of insecurities, Gideon's first insecurity is Gideon was afraid. Now listen to this now. Gideon was afraid that God would not be faithful. In Judges chapter 6, verse 13, it says, But sir, Gideon replied, if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? The first root of Gideon's insecurity is he was believing the wrong things about God. Gideon was questioning God's character. He's questioning God's faithfulness. He was questioning that God would be true to his word. He was asking God, why has all this happened? Listen to me, if we're all going to be honest, or maybe it's just me, maybe one or two of you along with me, but if we're going to be honest, I think we do the same thing with God sometimes. Like, God, if you're supposed to answer my prayers, why doesn't it ever seem like you're answering my prayer? Why does it always seem like the opposite happens, God? God, why does good things happen to bad people, and it always seems like bad things are happening to good people? God, why? Why does it seem, God, I want to go forward, but it always seems like I end up going backward? Why, God? A great example of this is if you've ever raised kids from infancy to early adulthood. Anybody ever raised kids from infancy to early adulthood? Anybody here? Okay, some of you. Okay, good. Okay, I thought I was the only one. Okay, but listen, you have a lot of opportunities to question the faithfulness of God. We try with everything we have to raise our kids the right way. Give or take a few thousand mistakes that we make as human beings, but we really try hard. When they're little infants, it's, they're babies. They're so adorable. Except when they go number 2. I could never change a diaper when my kid went, the smelly kind. I couldn't do it. But you go, they're adorable. Then they become toddlers, and daddy comes home from work, and here they come, daddy's home. They're grabbing daddy's leg. They're all excited about seeing daddy. And then they become adolescents. And daddy comes home and says, honey, where's the kids? They were hiding because Mom said, wait till your dad gets home. You're in big trouble. Hopefully your wife doesn't talk with that deep a voice, but she says something like that. And then they get to teenagers and the college age. And it's a car, it's money, and it's what I call, Pastor, shock and awe. Because your teenager, it looks like they're doing really good, for God, and all of a sudden you found out something that they've been doing wrong, shock, awe. Then you get them all back, and everything looks good, and next thing you know, you find out something else, awe. But you know what happens too? Is you really begin to question whether God is really going to come through with your kids. And listen to me, young people. Some of you in this room are ones that your parents are questioning whether God's going to come through for you. Gideon, like some of us, started questioning the faithfulness of God. His second root of his insecurity was Gideon was afraid that he was not good enough. Listen, in Judges chapter 6, verse 15, it says, but Lord, how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. The second root to his insecurity was he was believing the wrong things about himself. Now, I don't know if you guys can relate to this, man, but I can relate to this big time. Listen to what Gideon was saying here. He's saying, God, how can I save Israel? You call me a mighty warrior. But God, I'm the weakest. My clan's the weakest, and I'm the least of my family. God, I'm not good enough, God. You got the wrong dude. God, look at my resume. I'm insecure. How many of you can relate to what Gideon was saying when God was asking him to do something? God, I'm not good enough. God, I'm insecure. God, look at my resume. You got the wrong guy. Let me ask you this question. I'm going to ask everyone in this room to really be honest with themselves. What has fear and insecurity kept you from doing that God is calling you to do? I've had people tell me when God's calling them to do something, people are telling me, Pastor Mark, my prayer life is weak. I'm spiritually inconsistent. I'm not the best looking person, Pastor Mark. Pastor Mark, I finished in the bottom half of that made the top half of a class possible. Pastor Mark, I'm not good enough. How about you? I can remember the first time. I can remember the one thing in my life that because of insecurity and fear I didn't do for a long time that God told me to do. When I was a young man, I got saved around 17. I was around 17 years old, 17 and a half. I was halfway through my senior year. And when I accepted Christ, it was like someone, pastor, took 1,000 pounds off my shoulders. I mean, I went radical. I was a star athlete in my school. I signed with the San Francisco Giants out of high school, really popular. And I went radical for God, man. I had this revelation of hell. I don't know. Hell was so real to me in that day. It was like I realized that people die, and if they don't know Christ, they are going to go to hell. And this realization broke my heart for my friends and my peers. I was telling everybody about Jesus because I didn't want to see anybody go to hell. I would lay in bed at night and pray and I would cry because I was concerned about people that I knew would go to hell. Fill up pews with people. I was so passionate about reaching souls. But listen to me. When it came to talking to my dad about it, though, I chickened out all the time. My dad, I had this reverence and awe for. When I was 13 years old, him and my mom got divorced. He moved to California. I lived in Pennsylvania, but we kept a great relationship. So I'd go see him and he'd come see me. But every time I talked to him on the phone, I wanted to talk to him about Jesus, but I would chicken out over and over again until after a few years, one time I was taking him back to the airport. And almost to the airport, looked at my dad and I said, Dad, I don't know what I would do